to start here, but
kill the feed, kill Wallace. I mean, this is ridiculous.
yeah. All right, Randy, good to be with you on that stuff. Hopefully everybody's got their blood pressure in check after listening to that.
Yeah.
I, for one, found a little frustrating to listen through that debate, and but I'm kind of interested in your thoughts. What are some of the key things that pop out to you, Trucker Randy?
Well, the biggest problem that I have, and it's the moderator's fault. He did not have control of this debate. He did not have control of the two participants. It was frustrating because of the way he basically allowed them to talk over top of one another and to basically be out of control. I mean, you don't get anything accomplished when both people are speaking. Yeah, and I think that's the moderator's fault.
I to a certain extent, and I tried to take a step back at this and look at it as objectively as possible. I tried to put myself in the shoes of both President Trump and Vice President Biden. And I said, all right, from a debate perspective, Vice President Biden has quite a bit of support in the media. And
Yes.
so Biden's clear purpose with this debate was to put out as many sound bites as possible for his friends in the media to parrot across all the networks as much as possible.
Yep.
And clearly President Trump understands that. He does, very rarely does he get a straight shot to go off and get his perspective on matters out through the media, because it's always going through a different filter. And it's a filter that, I mean, there's study after study talking about the bias in the media. And so the president, I can understand why he wants to take advantage of this opportunity where everybody's listening on both sides of the spectrum to be able to make his case for what he believes are some false narratives being portrayed by Vice President Biden. And oh, by the way, when he does that in an interruptive fashion, like
Yep.
he did, and I think he did do more interrupting than Vice President Biden did, I think that's fair. But I think there's a tactic to it, because he doesn't want to give a clean soundbite to Vice President Biden that can be parroted out there. He wants to make sure that any soundbite that he gets is going to have a little bit of a morsel of another perspective on what actually is happening. Because if he leaves it to just the media picking up what he said in rebuttal to Vice President Biden,
Yeah.
those rebuttal marks never seem to make it into the news stories. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. It was obvious that he was trying to be disruptive to those sound bites. Dave Agerman just texted me a message. He said, well, in your opinion, who won and why? And I think, honestly, from that point you just made,
Yeah.
that Donald Trump actually talking over the Biden's talking points has taken away their ability to get anything that Biden wanted to say. I found it kind of interesting. He contradicted himself on, one comment. He's for the Green New Deal. Then he says he's not for the new Green Deal. He's calling it global warming instead of climate change.
Yeah.
I think, there's so many things that it was misleading. I mean, really, he's going to talk about suburbs are going to suffer because of COVID and because of flooding. Now, you really think the people out there in America are going to buy Joe Biden's theories that, the suburbs are going to die because of COVID and flooding? I don't think he has a grasp of reality as to what's really going on here in America.
Yeah, and I think this debate format didn't necessarily help clear that up at all either. And the one thing I want to encourage everybody who's listening to this debate, and who listen to the debate and listen to us talking about the debate right now, I want to encourage them to go to trusted data sources to find out exactly what the truth really is. And I would submit a lot of these actually require a lot of background information as well. So, for example, when they talk about critical race theory and what President Trump issued an executive order to cease and desist the execution of inside of federal agencies, the way that Chris Wallace was presenting this, I don't think really did justice to what is actually being taught in this training. I think people should actually go off and actually experience or hear some of these trainings that are going on, and what people are forced to go off and submit to in context of this training, and then go off and ask the question whether or not that something should have been stopped.
Chris Wallace called it sensitivity training.
Yes, and that's a blatant misrepresentation.
What it is.
No, not at all.
My granddaughter, Pat, came to me with an English assignment for freshman English right up here in Traverse City, Michigan.
Yep.
Northwestern Michigan College. A 12-page handout talking about white privilege.
Yep.
Then they gave her a questionnaire with 20 questions on it that she was supposed to check mark of all the 20 items, which ones applied to her because of her white privilege.
Yep. And what if she didn't check any of them, right? She didn't do the assignment, right?
No, she refused. And the entire class was dismissed from doing it because they stood up and said, what does this have to do with English in freshman college?
And like it or lump it or whatever, President Trump's the first one who stood up and said, wait a second, I cry foul on this training, because this is happening not just in federal government, it's happening in our schools, it's happening in businesses, it's happening all across America, and it really is designed to try to convince all Americans that we are not a good nation, that
our history is bad, and that we white people are bad. I mean, this
is the Howard Zinn Education Project, and I think Dinesh D'Souza refuted it beautifully in his movie America Imagine the World Without Her, and he did a phenomenal job addressing that. And but I ultimately, in all this, go to the data. So if you're wondering around what is actually going around COVID-19, go look at the actual data. I mean, there's a lot of different data sources out there. The one that I tend to go to is covidtracking.com. Pull up your own spreadsheets, look at the data, and then understand that the test results, about 90% of them are false positive. Understand that when they're citing deaths, that 6% of them are, only 6% of those deaths that are figured there have no other comorbidities. And then put everything else in context, including his statements around extrapolation of fatality numbers. You have to go to the data here. This isn't a case of sound bites. I think Vice President Biden wants to win a soundbite war because of his assets in the media. I think that the tough part is in 2 minutes, how does President Trump go off and address a complicated subject like COVID, a complicated subject like critical race theory, a complicated subject like the economy in that time frame? It's really difficult.
Well, the biggest thing, the takeaway for me, where I think President Trump won, and he allowed Joe Biden to expound for his 2 minutes, was where he basically allowed him to talk about implementation of the new Green Deal. Where he talked about, weatherization of 4 million homes, and he talked about getting rid of, fossil fuels, and that we're going to do it by renewable energy. The cost to our economy, the changing and the shutting down of small businesses in this country would be, I think that moment was the clearest moment into a Biden presidency.
Well, and I think it was the clearest moment into any data of substance as well.
Yes.
Because you actually saw details of the plan. You heard the number of homes. People can kind of get their hands around that. It was the first time we actually heard anything. It's pretty nebulous when you go off and say, what's your stance on climate change, right?
Yes.
That is a pretty loaded term. And so
then the other aspect of it, Pat, he said it's going to produce all these, hundreds of thousands of, well-paying jobs in an industry that they don't even have batteries capable of storing solar power. Okay, they don't even have the ability, the technology that they're talking about for us to get away from, gas-burning automobiles.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in favor of electric cars. He's going to put 500,000 charging stations across America. Who's going to pay for all this stuff?
Yeah, I think when you actually start getting into the details of this, which, I'm an engineer, so my background, I'm going to want to see the actual data. When I was in the middle of debates for governor, I mean, I was the one pushing real solutions and data out there, and it's tough to do in a 30-second or even a 1-minute soundbite. And they had 2 minutes to go off and do it, but it was anyway. It's really difficult to go off and get that breakout in here. I just There's so much to unwrap on this, and then you get into the election integrity.
Well,
And
the last part, just to answer Dave Vajama's question, I don't think either candidate, quote unquote, won. I think the base that's supporting Trump is supporting Trump. The base that's supporting Biden is supporting Biden. And it all comes down to exactly what you just started to talk about, election integrity and these ballots. And I'm sorry, but for these Democrats to blame COVID and the mailing system and that they're not going to be able to get all these mail-in ballots counted, well, that's their fault. That's their problem. They're the ones that caused this entire shutdown, and they caused this problem. And so now they want extensions to count the ballots. I'm sorry, that's not what our election laws say.
And by the way, I'm just doing this from a time study perspective. I'm looking at this, and historically, it's around a 50-50 split on in-person versus absentee ballots. This may go up to the point where it's a 30-70, so 70% absentee ballots.
20% more, right.
So maybe, and if you can count all of the poll votes in one sitting here before the shortly after the polls close, like 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night.
Sure.
So that's about 4 hours after the polls close. So you've been voting up at that time, maybe 16 hours. All right. Yep. So let's go off and sit there and say, well, now if I have twice as many ballots to go off and count through the absentee ballot machine, and I got to funnel it through there, and let's assume there's no efficiencies from the fact that you just stack them up as absentee ballots and run them through the machine all in a speed reader mode, which is what they actually do. But let's assume you don't get that. And roughly it's going to take about twice the amount of time to go off and count those absentee ballots. So you got another 16 hours to add to this. Why are they adding 2 weeks? Exactly. Why are they adding something's rotten in Denmark here? Yep. And you know as well as I do, it's tough to keep eyeballs on quote-unquote secure ballots for that long.
Well, we tried to do it in 2016. Marion Sheridan and all the folks that went down to Coble Hall and tried to monitor what was going on. Bob Cushman's experiences on August 4th primary. There's no way we're going to be able to go down there and be able to monitor all these ballots and these absentee ballots. 30 drop boxes, Pat, have been installed in the city of Detroit. Okay, there's no way we're going to be able to stay down there, 2, 3, 4 days a week and keep our eyes on those ballots the entire time?
The other interesting aspect of that is that there's a 501c3 that was organized and never got more than $90,000 a year throughout its inception. All of a sudden this year, it got funded to the tunes of millions of dollars, and they put those ballot drop boxes in Democratic strongholds, disproportionate to where the Republican strongholds are. I actually helped support an organization called the Election Integrity Fund that is filing lawsuit against them for that. This is ripe for malpractice. You mentioned our good friend Bob Cushman. Yep. When he was at the Detroit absentee ballot counting area on election night in this most recent primary,
right,
he noted, and he signed an affidavit to this effect, that there was a car with Ohio plates that had backed up into the actual location where they were counting the ballots. What's going on here? And then President cited ballots that have been thrown in the trash with his name on the ballot. Guys, there are concerns with this, and I don't think, also, when you were talking about the moderator earlier with Chris Wallace, I don't think he understood the difference between mail-in voting and absentee voting. He said 250,000 people voted via mail-in voting. That's not accurate. It's maybe 40 or maybe 250,000 voted remotely, and so they actually sent in absentee ballots and mail-in ballots. There's a difference, and the president was very clear about trying to make that difference. I think Chris Wallace did a horrible job clarifying that. A mail-in ballot is when unsolicited, the Secretary of State sends me a ballot to go off and vote. Voter registration databases are off often by about 20%. So in a state like Michigan, that means that you can have 2 million invalid addresses. Where do those ballots go? If they're just mailing them out, that's mail-in voting. If you're doing it in absentee voting, I say, hey, I would like to vote absentee this year, and you go off and ask the Secretary of State for an absentee ballot. That is very significantly different, because the error rates is significantly lower. You don't deal with the 20% fraudulent data in your database when that happens.
Exactly.
And so there's a big difference between the two.
You make the application to your local clerk.
Yep.
The application is processed. They actually make record of the ballot and the ballot number that they're sending you. You get the ballot with the tab still on there with that ballot number. You send it back, and they, the ones that are tearing it off and feeding it into the tabulator, they know that they got your ballot back from your application. That's not what President Trump's talking about.
Right. So you got to dig into these issues. Also, when it came to the fires in California, I was kind of waiting for the president to bring this up, and he didn't. But do you know how many of the folks, how many arsonists they highlighted on that were caught setting these fires deliberately, and how many of these were activists with sympathies towards the Democratic Party?
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Oh, by the way, somehow there was a big narrative that this had to do with climate change.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one particular follow-up, an investigative reporter from California, Pat, the fault line of exactly where they plan to put a new rail system.
Yeah.
It's amazing where those fires were started is right in the areas where they're proposing to put the railroad in, that they basically did all the land clearing for them by burning all the trees to the ground.
And how many people have died and lost their homes as a result?
Exactly. Out of control fires, you can't stop it. You get those winds, and man, you can't stop those fires once they get going. And timber management out there in California has been disastrous for years. I mean, that goes all the way back to Jerry Brown, how they didn't want to take care of timber management, and they got just massive, excessive timber out there ready to go at any time. So it's ridiculous. This whole thing, I don't know. The way I sum it up, I don't think anybody won. I think the base now still supports their candidate, and I'll just be so glad when this is over. Honestly, I don't even know about these upcoming debates. These if they're going to be moderated like this one, I think it's a complete waste of time.
Well, here's the key takeaway from my perspective. This is what I'm hoping everybody is listening to this, and everybody listens to it after we get done talking about this. Takeaway from it: you have to be an informed voter in order to make sense out of any of this stuff. You need to understand what the truth is. You can go to sites like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, find out what was the final 3 years of the Obama administration versus the first 3 years of the Trump administration. Look at the stats. I mean, there's some debate over how you actually calculate unemployment, and I get that, but the raw data is out there. Make your case. So if you're going to say that it's 3 years one way or the other, that's a good place to start for the data on that. If you want to find out what's going on with COVID-19, go to the covidtrackingproject.com for starters. I'm not 100% in sync with the data that's there, but for other reasons that we cited earlier. But look at that. If you want to find out about critical race theory, do some research. Find out what a critical race theory training actually looks like.
Yes.
So do your research on it, please. And that's the only way. At letsfixstuff.org, we try to get data out there for you to be able to go off and understand what's really going on. That if you're just listening to the media, if you're just listening to the mainstream media in particular, you're never going to get the truth. I'm telling you that right now.
Well, and it's what I do every day, Monday through Friday, Pat. I'm focused like a laser beam on Michigan news and Michigan politics. And for folks out there not in our listening area of 97.7 FM WCHY up here in Sheboygan, the website is yourdefendingfathers.com. We do the show live 9 to noon. Then the website repeats that show every day, 3 hours. So if you miss the first hour, it repeats at noon, 3 p.m., 6 p.m., 9 p.m., midnight. You just got to listen, learn, and then share the information with your friends, your family, your coworkers, people you go to church with. They need to know the truth. That's the bottom line.
And even if you're not in Michigan, the data you're talking about and some of the policy issues that we're facing in the state of Michigan, I'll tell you, they're repeated all across the country. And it's very useful to see what's going on in other states. And I, as a state legislator, I was amazed at how similar it was with some of the initiatives that I was facing here in Michigan versus Missouri versus Florida. There's a lot of commonality because what we're seeing is there's a lot of national groups that are pushing the same narrative across the board in all these different states. And if you understand what's going on in Michigan, and you are, from my perspective, the de facto best source of information on what's really going on in our state legislature, in our state executive branch and judicial branch. You get some of the best guests on there, and you do your research every single day to get that information out. Even if you're not in Michigan, I would submit that it's valuable to go off and tune into your radio show.
Well, I appreciate that, Pat, because I do, put a lot of effort into prepping for the show, and I read every bill. I monitor MERS and all the other news sources, and it's a lot of work, but it's my mission. It's what I'm dedicated to doing for everybody here in Michigan, and like you say, even some folks outside the state.
Yeah, so bottom line is, on all this, everybody, this is no time for voters to sit back and just be happy and play personality games. If you really want to understand the truth, if you want to influence others to understand that truth, you got to have the data behind it. So
got to be educated.
I encourage you all to check that out. Check out Let's Fix Stuff. We've got a lot of that information. I try to get the key information for the key issues that are out there, but and you do the same job here on the radio station with a lot of information specific to state matters. I just encourage folks to check out Trucker Randy. We're going to give you more information here in just a sec, and just leave you. We're going to try to tee this up again for debate number 2. We got some new things that are being planned to actually supplement that discussion next time, and try to introduce some poll features into that next one. So please get the word out about this engagement. We're trying to go around the traditional media and their talking points on it, and try to get to the heart of the issues that really matter. And I promise you, every single time we do one of these, we're going to get better and better and better, because a lot is at stake in this upcoming election. A lot is at stake past this election. We want to make sure we develop into a news source that you trust for the facts.
Amen, sir.
All right. Well, God bless you. I appreciate you joining me today. Once again, Trucker Randy Bishop here out of WCHY. And you can get him on the internet now, guys. You don't have to be in Sheboygan to pick it up. So please tune in whenever you get that opportunity.
Thank you, Pat.
All right. Thank you, Randy.
Hey everybody, it's Trucker Randy. We do a radio show, Your Defending Fathers, on 97.7 FM WCHY, Sheboygan, 9 a.m. to noon, Monday through Friday. And you can be a part of it by texting your comments into the show. We talk about Michigan news and Michigan politics. Our slogan, Lansing hates us, but the people love us. At noon, we play the super hits of the 60s, 70s, Motown, and the roots of rock and roll. Listen on 97.7 FM or at our website, wchy.us. I'm back.
We're in the middle of an information war. It's not between Democrats and Republicans. It's not between conservatives and liberals. It's a war between those who seek to fundamentally transform America and those who seek to preserve what is noble and true about America. It's not a war of bullets, it's a war of words. Truth itself has been politicized. Citizens who vote base their votes on their understanding of this truth. And when we allow the truth itself to be politicized, we erode the very fabric of our constitutional republic. We open the door to other systems of government. We promote sedition. The net impact of this sedition is no different than if a foreign army were to subjugate us under their rule. People will die. Freedom will be lost for us and for future generations. Now, the odds in this information war now appear to be stacked against us. All of our mainstream news outlets feature distinct political bias in the news that they share and in the news that they don't share. The same talking points featured in nightly broadcasts are eerily identical across all these outlets. Facebook's so-called fact-checkers would be more appropriately named political commissars. Twitter follows a similar policy of political censorship. It's time to fight back. That's why we created letsfixstuff.org. When the mainstream media pushes their false narrative in unison, we push back with the facts. When the fundamental transformation crowd attempts to hide what is really going on, we shed the light of truth on the stories they seek to hide. When big tech politically censors these uncomfortable truths, we give these truths a home for all people to see. In short, letsfixstuff.org is an arsenal for those who seek to promote what is noble and true about America. You can help equip our fellow freedom fighters with the truth for as little as 16 cents per day by joining the Right Stuff Club. We can win this information war. but we need your help to do so. Spread the word. Equip yourself and others with our arsenal of truth at letsfixstuff.org.